2025 will forever be known as the year of Nintendo Switch 2. It all started back in January when Nintendo just randomly revealed the Nintendo Switch 2. And that was such an exciting time. You know, we were all waiting at the edge of our seats for the day that the Nintendo Switch 2 would be revealed. Of course, following the reveal trailer, we also had the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Direct, which showed us more games for the Nintendo Switch 2, more details about the system itself, and of course, the major drama of the price of not only the system, but the games as well. And it's really crazy to think that all of these months later, we are still seeing that drama being circulated about Nintendo and pricing, as well as the game key cards. I don't know if this is just recency bias, but this does feel like one of the more drama-filled console releases, especially from Nintendo. But hey, that didn't stop us from being absolutely toad hype when the Nintendo Switch 2 was released in June. Despite everything that happened, and hey, even on the launch of the Nintendo Switch 2, we had some drama like GameStop stapling receipts through the box. At the end of the day, we finally got to have our grubby little hands on the Nintendo Switch 2. And that was so crazy when we were all sort of reacting to the Nintendo Switch 2 system itself. The larger screen, the new Joy-Con 2 controllers, and even the viral game chat camera features. But of course, I think the highlight that really sort of brought communities together was the release of Mario Kart World alongside the Nintendo Switch 2. Once again, a very divisive reaction to this game, whether it was the large straightaways that appeared in online matches, the insane process of unlocking characters, and the absolutely OP tricks and secrets that people were learning through all of the tracks. But overall, as a huge fan of Mario Kart, especially Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I at the very least found it interesting to have this brand new Mario Kart experience that was very different than what we were used to for so many years. And that was just the beginning of what would be coming from Nintendo in 2025. So today I want to look back and see what were some of the highs and lows from Nintendo in 2025, at least that I've personally experienced. Well, shortly following the release of the Nintendo Switch 2, Nintendo released a brand new 3D Donkey Kong game, Donkey Kong Bananza. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit hesitant about Donkey Kong Bananza before it came out. I think especially considering that we were all looking forward to a new 3D Mario game for the Nintendo Switch 2, whether it would be Mario Odyssey 2 or Mario Galaxy 3. It was kind of surprising to see a 3D Donkey Kong game instead. So my expectations were a little bit tempered when I first popped in Donkey Kong Bananza. But oh boy, was I happily very mistaken, because I quickly learned just how amazing Donkey Kong Bananza is. I was absolutely loving, blasting through all of the terrain as Donkey Kong. I was also very relieved to learn that Pauline was not the traditional annoying secondary character that follows you throughout your journey. And of course, the soundtrack for this game absolutely slaps. I did see some people online saying that, they didn't understand Donkey Kong Bananza, that it was boring and repetitive, and I totally understand their opinion and perspective. I can see how maybe this might not be everybody's cup of tea. The best way that I've been describing Donkey Kong Bananza to people is, this game is like junk food brain rot that you find yourself playing until 3 o'clock in the morning. Because that's literally how I was playing this game. It's so satisfying to, just break everything and collect all the collectibles. It's one of these games where you just kind of turn off your brain and just play it, which I can understand if people don't totally vibe with. But hey, speaking of games that people don't vibe with, we had Dragon Drive come out for the Nintendo Switch 2. This was revealed in the Nintendo Switch 2 Nintendo Direct back in January as sort of a tech demo type of game for the Nintendo Switch 2, somewhat similar to what ARMS was to the original Nintendo Switch. Dragon Drive uses a combination of a bunch of the features found in the Joy-Con 2 controllers, including the mouse controls and motion controls. And so you're basically playing basketball ball in these sort of wheelchair type of vehicles. And there are a bunch of different game modes to play. You know, you can play online with other people. And listen, I thought Drag and Drive was interesting for, you know, the very short time that I played it. I think there's something kind of fun and almost satisfying to learning the very just weird and almost difficult controls to this game, because you are using both Joy-Con in many different sort of positions and styles. You can steer this little vehicle by moving your Joy-Con with mouse controls. Then you can, you know, use one hand with motion control to shoot the ball. There are just a lot of weird controls to this game that I think makes for a fun challenge to actually learn and even sort of master. But I did not play Drag and Drive for very long. I basically tried to learn the game for like a week or two, and you know, I kind of quickly moved on to something else. Which is kind of sad, because back when ARMS came out on the original Nintendo Switch, I actually quite enjoyed ARMS. You know, there was a point in time where I think I was actually pretty darn good at ARMS, especially with using a Pro controller. But with Drag and Drive, I don't know, I feel like there just isn't enough sort of depth for the game to actually make it worth returning to. I guess the bright side of this is that Drag and Drive wasn't a full-priced game. Like, don't get me wrong, I will buy anything that Nintendo tries to sell me, but where I would draw the line is if Drag and Drive were a full-priced game. And speaking of full-priced games, October saw the release of Super Mario Galaxy plus Super Mario Galaxy 2 on the Nintendo Switch. This bundle of Super Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2 on the Nintendo Switch was released in celebration of the Super Mario Bros. 40th anniversary, as well as the reveal of the Super Mario Galaxy movie coming out in 2026. And listen, I am a huge fan of Nintendo, especially Mario. I love this guy. And especially with the Super Mario Galaxy series, like I would say Super Mario Galaxy might be in my at least top 3 Mario games of all time. But I do think it's fair that people were really questioning the $70 price tag of Super Mario Galaxy plus Galaxy 2. And listen, I'm no accountant, like the most that I did was intro to business in college, so I don't necessarily have a very strong opinion about the $70 for Mario Galaxy and Galaxy 2, because on one hand, these are games that are over 10 years old. On the other hand, you know, you are getting these 2 Wii games that they've done some graphical upgrades. You know, if I'm not mistaken, there are even some benefits for the Nintendo Switch 2 in particular, but I understand that even with these updates, it may not even justify the $70 price tag. The somewhat bright side of this whole situation is that, similar to what Nintendo did for Pikmin 1 and 2, you can buy Super Mario Galaxy separately from Galaxy 2 and vice versa. So for example, if you already have Super Mario Galaxy through the Super Mario 3D All-Stars game, you can just buy Super Mario Galaxy 2 on its own for $40 US. Then in November, we got Kirby Air Riders on the Nintendo Switch 2. And to everyone's surprise, this is a sequel to Kirby Air Ride on the Nintendo GameCube many years later. Kirby Air Riders is a racing game featuring Kirby and the gang. You have a few different game modes here. There's the just regular old traditional racing. You have this top-down view racing, which was also in the original Kirby Air Ride game. There's even this single-player sort of story type of game mode. And of course, the beloved city trial mode. Now, I do have a confession to make. I was honestly not the biggest fan of Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube. When it came to Kirby Air Ride versus Mario Kart Double Dash, I was much more of a Mario Kart type of guy. Not that you have to choose between the two, but especially here on the Nintendo Switch 2, where we're getting both of these games in the same calendar year, I was honestly feeling a little bit fatigued of racing games on the Nintendo Switch 2. But hey, for what it is, Kirby Air Riders is a very faithful sequel to Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube. It is a very simplistic approach to a racing game. While the original Kirby Air Ride only used 1 button on the GameCube controller, Kirby Air Riders now uses 2 buttons, which is way too much for my tiny brain to handle. But that does mean it makes it very easy to pick up and play, especially, at least in my opinion, for newcomers to video games in general. All you have to do is use the stick to steer and then press the button to brake or drift. so it's very much a straightforward control system. Now, if we're talking more complex and hardcore games, just 2 weeks following Kirby Air Riders, we had the release of the long-awaited Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. It's so crazy that this game came out 8 years following its initial reveal at E3 2017. And interestingly enough, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond released with both a Nintendo Switch and a Nintendo Switch 2 version, which I imagine is very similar to the release of Twilight Princess on both the Wii and the GameCube, as well as Breath of the Wild on both Wii U and Switch. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond was revealed as an original Nintendo Switch game, so I feel like it was more or less obligation that made Nintendo release Metroid Prime 4 Beyond on both Nintendo Switch and Switch 2. Anyway, as for the game itself, people's opinions about this game just felt all over the place. Some people were saying this was like the worst game ever made, other people were really praising Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, and then you also had people right down the middle. I can only talk about my experience as someone who has never played a Metroid game in my life. So far, about 6 or 7 hours into the game, I'm actually having a pretty enjoyable time with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. I was never really like the biggest first-person shooter guy, so it's kind of cool to see with this game a bunch of different elements combined that are found in Nintendo's DNA. You have the first-person shooter element, of course, but also, you know, exploration and puzzle solving. And similar to Breath of the Wild, you have this new open world element included in the game, which I know is a very controversial part of this game. So for my personal experience, I'm having a pretty enjoyable time with Metroid Prime 4 Beyond so far. But it is crazy to see, you know, just how much of a difference in reviews this game has to the previous Metroid Prime games. So it's not the most exciting thing for Nintendo to end 2025 with, but we do at least have some fun things to look forward to from Nintendo in 2026. And speaking of which, I'll be posting a video all about what Nintendo has up their sleeves for 2026, so make sure you're subscribed to see that video. Let me know in the comments what were your guys' highlights and lowlights of 2025. For now, thank you for watching, and thank you so much to all of our Yama Squad members. My name is Chase, and I will see you guys again soon. Bye!